going to be a busy month. We have the ECB this Thursday. We have the Fed on the same day as BOJ. What have we learned about central bank inaction over the summer months?
I guess we've learned that they've been discussing a lot where they're going to take rates eventually in this cycle. So the R-star debate that has been very central in Jackson Hole. And then we've learned, well, I guess throughout the year, about the limits of implementing zero-rate policies and the collateral damage this creates with particularly the rallies at the very long end of the curve, the damage to pension insurance companies that very low yields have created.
When does a yield start being normalized? I mean, the curve is basically non-existent, right? Everything's compressed.
Right. Although we started to see that turning a little bit in Japan.
Yeah, which is my chart of the hour.
Okay, you have it there. There you go. So I think that is a reflection mostly of how the central bank has spoken about its implementation of policy. Now, the next big thing seems to be try to steepen back the yield curve to make the policy even more effective. And so that has been reflected in the pricing over the past month or so. So I'd say the bottom line is that these long-term rates seem to be highly determined by what central banks do, so the demand and supply for securities.
Francesco, what can the Fed do to help or at least not hurt the rest of the world?
I'd say hike gradually. I think the way this is going to go is that they will hike again. We have a higher chances of them moving already in September. Mainly because we find it hard to see what they're going to come up with to say why they're not going. I mean, the unemployment rate was okay, and we didn't have a catastrophe out of Brexit, two factors that had refrained them from hiking in June. So I think the narrative can be pretty straightforward for delivering a hike in September. Now, the probability is not there, but it would take a couple of speeches to lift it up. And then alongside with the hike, they could come out and say the trajectory is going to be lower, and that will be interpreted as a dovish normalization of policy.
Francesco, it's a time for readjustment. I know you've done that within your Goldman Sachs research notes. Let's bring up a chart we're going to show through the morning, and this is the three major banks' assets. The white line is the U.S., the red line is Japan, and down below is the austerity, the tentativeness of ECB. Francisco, what is the new orthodoxy of economics that links into finance? What are you thinking about moving to October and moving into next year?
Well, I think I think the policy winds are changing in an important direction. There's greater recognition among policy circles, particularly the monetary ones, that there are limits to lowering rates. The so-called effective lower bound is relatively shallow because of the institutional frictions that we live with. And therefore, there's been a push towards expanding fiscal policy and allowing central banks to underwrite essentially bigger budgets, expansions through the QE programs. We're likely to see this in action here in the UK. The ECB is going to continue doing QE, in our view, throughout all of 2017. And the BOJ is set the path, I think, there.